Hey folks, Joe Valley here, one of the hosts of the Quiet Light podcast, and today's episode is brought to you by, yes, Quiet Light Brokerage, a small to middle market entrepreneur-led M&A firm focused on online businesses only. Everyone on our team has built, bought, or sold their own online business and now act as advisors to other entrepreneurs seeking an eventual exit. See, no pressure, eventual exit. We're very laid back about our process and we're helping you first. In 2020, our largest deal was just under 25 million and the average was 1.7. The smallest was just about $16,000. My point with sharing those is that we're here to help everyone in the audience, no matter the size of your business. Now, before I introduce today's guest, I want to share some relevant information from you from a couple of deals. If you heard my two-part podcast interview with Mike Jackness when I sold his business back in 2019, his business was Color It. We talked about it on the podcast. His buyer had no issue with it. So we talked about it in detail. You know that we made an add back adjustment when Mike renegotiated his cost of goods sold with his manufacturer partway through the year. Doing this proper add back adjustment added $43,000 to Mike's SDE and almost $142,000 to the list price of the business. It was simple math and logic that most aggregators hope you miss when you buy into their pitch of avoiding the broker fee. On a separate deal last year, I had a buyer that had a manufacturing connection that was able to produce the same exact product line for about $4 less per unit. The buyer knew this alone, get these numbers, would save him about $17,000 a month and give him instant equity of about $714,000 when he closed on the business. Because of that, he was happy to outbid other buyers with this knowledge in hand. So if you haven't figured it out yet, today's guest is a manufacturing expert. He focuses specifically on the supplement space and helps e-commerce entrepreneurs reduce their cost of goods sold, improve their bottom line, and overall value of their business. His name is Sean Ross, and he's with Total Wellness Solutions. Sean, welcome to the Quiet Light podcast.
Thank you for having me, Joe. It's a real pleasure, honor to be here, and looking forward to sharing some insights, some knowledge that I've acquired over my entire career with some of your listeners today, and hopefully they can get some value out of it.
I'm looking forward to that as well, because what you offer in terms of reducing cost of goods sold, people are always trying to drive more revenue, more revenue, more revenue. And it really should be about more profit, more profit, more profit. And you help tremendously with that. So why don't we talk about your background and your history? Why don't you tell folks a little bit about that so they understand the expertise level that you do have?
Sure. Well, I wish I had a real heart throbbing story that brought me to this industry, but it was really out of need for a job, like most people out there.
Yeah,
and so I was actually in law school in 2008, 2009 when the economy crashed. Mm-hmm. And it was a really bad situation for everybody in the United States. And so I was in law school freaking out about student loan debt and realized, not sure this is really the best path for me, as soon as the Wall Street Journal came out with an article saying the worst year ever for law school graduates. I'm seeing peers of mine doing paralegal work for $25 an hour and have, $250,000 plus in student loan debt. Oof. And so I said, I'm going to take a break. And I'm originally from Montreal, Canada. So I drove from Michigan to Montreal, met with my mom over the weekend, and I flew back from Montreal to LA to meet with my girlfriend, who is now my wife. I've been with her for 18 years now. So you can do the math to figure out how young I am. And so on this flight back from Montreal to LA, I was pouring out my guts to this guy, Oscar, who was just such a mensch, as we would say, right? Mm-hmm. Just a guy that just would really listen. And I shared with him, my concerns. Then obviously he had some of his own. And, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I have all the student loan debt. I don't know where I'm going to go. I don't know how I'm going to make money. And I'm thinking my problems are the biggest problems in the world, but they're probably not compared to many other people that, have children and parents and other things they've got to take care of and mortgages. I didn't have any of that back then, but it was big to me. And so he listened and, I asked him, questions about himself. And I said, how did you get into what you're doing? And He's like, I'm a plumber. He's like, look, I've always been a plumber. My grandfather was a plumber, my father, my uncles, everybody in my family is a plumber. I was like, but did you ever think about doing anything else? And he said, believe it or not, I was kind of in a similar situation to you back in the early 80s when the economy wasn't in such a great place. And I was graduating high school. I wasn't graduating college. And I was thinking about going to play football. And my grandfather gave me this advice that I want to give you. Am I allowed to curse on your podcast, by the way?
You are, but it will get an explicit rating. I didn't know that until I decided to share a podcast with my sister. And she said, and it was on Spotify. She goes, why does it have an explicit rating? And I felt dirty all of a sudden.
Oh
But
my God.
feel free to say whatever you want.
All right. If it's too offensive, we can cut it. But I'm going to give you the exact quote that he gave me because I feel it makes the most impact. And he said, listen, whatever you decide to do in life as far as a job, remember there are two things that humans will always do. They'll eat and they'll shit. And so if you pick one of those two industries to work in, you'll always have a job. Needless to say, I picked the shitty part of the industry, right? And so I just want to give that to you, Sean. And so as I'm driving from LA to San Diego, I'm thinking about all the things he missed. You know, humans have to breathe, humans need clothing, humans need shelter. I'm just like going through all the things he missed. But besides the point, I was focusing really in on, you know, what he told me. And so I thought, okay, I want nothing to do with that at the other end. I want to focus on the food part. And so I came down to San Diego. No joke, I must have applied to 100 plus companies in the food industry and found a job in the nutrition industry. And that's where it all started. And I worked my way up the ladder, moved on to the world's largest sports nutrition company that owns some major brands that all the listeners here would be very, very well aware of. And that's where it all started.
And at that major sports nutrition company, your role was, I think we talked about it before, it was working with the manufacturers and reducing cost of goods sold. What led you to doing what you do now? I assume that you probably had something to do with that at that company.
We did a little bit. So I was fortunate enough to learn really everything that goes into making a nutritional product. And it wasn't just nutritional. We had some food brands, some beverage brands that we manufacture products for as well. And so we owned our own contract manufacturing facilities at this big company. And so I got to see really what did it cost to make the finished product? You know, what should it cost to blend? What does it cost to fill? What are the testing costs? You know, what should the yields be on these? You know, that's a lot of things people miss is like, okay, well, you know, if they're losing 5-10% of their product, there's cost that's being lost there, right? Especially if you're supplying some of the components. I learned about ingredient manufacturing because we were an ingredient manufacturer, one of the largest in the world. And so I understood what does it cost to make these ingredients. And so, you know, for doing this for so many brands for so many years, I realized there's a lot of brands out there that were overpaying, and a lot of the ones that we were making products for that were overpaying. And obviously I was on the other side of the table and trying to get as much margin for our own company. But at the same time, I saw what it was doing to a lot of these brands that were struggling to come back for a second order. And so instead of, you know, focusing on squeezing my customers for as much margin, I wanted to find a happy place, a happy medium. And obviously the big company I was working for didn't like that. They wanted me to squeeze them for as much margin. They didn't care if they came back for a second order or a third order. They wanted to maximize it on the first one. And so at that point, I decided I'm going to take everything I learned. I'm going to start my own brands, and I'm going to try and help some other brands achieve success that I believe they can be awarded if they were given the right knowledge and insight expertise that I'm able to give them.
Awesome. Hence the launch of TWSnutrition.com. For those in the audience that are just closing a transaction on buying a nutritional supplement company, or those that run them now, can you share like one or two ideas on how to reduce their cost of goods sold if they're just going to keep negotiating with their current manufacturer? Anything that you would do when you step in and look at these things?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the easiest place to look for some savings right away would be in the ingredients, right? And so, you know, say you've got, 5 ingredients or 10 ingredients, pick, the top 3 or top 4 that are really making up the most cost. And if you don't know what the cost of those ingredients are, and your manufacturer isn't willing to disclose that and share it with you, you can go out to the market and you can find it, right? You can do some searches online. And for example, if you want to find out what is ascorbic acid, which is vitamin C, what is the market cost on that? You can type in ascorbic acid ingredient suppliers or distributors. And after making half a dozen to a dozen phone calls, you can get a pretty good sense of what the cost or the market cost of ascorbic acid is right now. And you can do that across all of your ingredients. And then look at your formula and look at your label and figure out, okay, what is my true ingredient cost for this product? And then whatever's left over is what the manufacturer is charging you for their manufacturing services, which would be the blending and the filling and the pack out and your packaging cost. And then you can move on to your packaging and find out, okay, if the manufacturer is supplying the packaging, well, then you can reach out to packaging suppliers, do the same thing I said about ingredients. You can search different packaging suppliers and understand
so you're
where
suggesting
that is.
somebody that, sells a supplement that includes vitamin C, for instance, that they would source that vitamin C and send it to the manufacturer themselves to reduce the cost of goods sold?
So that you can do either, but in the example you're giving me where they're happy with their manufacturer, but they want to figure out how they can reduce their cost of goods, and then they go to their manufacturer with this information and say, look,
okay,
I'm thinking about supplying these ingredients. If I were to supply all the ingredients, what would you charge me for just the blending and the filling of my product? And that'll really give you a good sense of what are they marking up the ingredient costs to, because there's always a markup, right? They have to cover overhead, they have to cover tax, insurance and everything else that comes along with it. But it really gives you a good deep inside look as to what your true cost is, right?
Yeah, and that's going to impress them that you've done that research and have the knowledge on their bottom line, so to speak.
Exactly.
You said to search for vendors, manufacturers, suppliers, or distributors. I always find that's incredibly hard. I feel like the manufacturing industry in this space is so antiquated. It's nearly impossible to find good ones just by doing a search. Am I wrong? Or what kind of keywords would you search for in doing that when you're trying to find the ones who, produce these products or supply them?
Great question. And you're right, there are a lot of really bad suppliers and bad manufacturers out there. And it's tough being a brand owner and not really coming from within the industry, because you're really taking a chance every time you commit to working with somebody. There is a great organization that you can look up. It's called IFT, and they list, this is where all the huge nutritional and supplement manufacturers and distributors will come to once a year. Well, they used to pre-COVID, and they'd go to Vegas and we'd take up, a convention center there, typically the Mandalay Bay, and you could walk up and down the aisles and you can find every single ingredient you can imagine, every distributor, every manufacturer. And I'm not kidding, there were thousands of exhibitors at that show. And so on their website, you can look up distributors, you can look up manufacturers, and it's a phenomenal resource. Phenomenal. There's another one.
What's IFT stand for?
That's a great question. I been here for somebody who's
International Freight Transport.
No, International Food.
Wrong company.
Technology. I think Food Technology Association.
I'm not going to let people. We're not going to go on until we figure out what it is.
That's a great question.
I would be more prepared if I knew
you were going to ask me this one.
Hey, I'm going to ask you all sorts of questions. Make sure you're not fully prepared. Eventsift.org. There you go, folks. I looked it up for you. International Food Technology Conference 2021. Yeah. Well, that's pretty cool. So you can go to that event, or can you find the name of all of those vendors and suppliers on their website?
They are, yeah.
Okay. So you don't actually have to go to Vegas. You don't have to wait. You can dig into those. Okay.
Absolutely.
So that's huge. I know that, when I sold my supplement company back in 2010, and I used Garden State Nutritionals, but then Douglas Laboratories. And I know that they would bring stuff in by the barrel load and then mix it all up and put it in a little capsule. Is it inconceivable that I could have ordered, the 55-gallon drums myself to save the cost and sent it to them? Or is it pretty likely that somebody like Douglas Labs is going to go, yeah, no, we're not letting you send us this because we've got certain standards?
Well, I know both those manufacturers very well. Hope they don't hear this podcast, but
We won't name names.
yeah, but they, they, like many others, like to make money on everything that they do, right? And if they're getting, an ingredient at, call it $5 a kilo, because they have this buying power, they're not going to just mark up their costs plus, whatever their service costs are. They're going to make margin on it. They're going to make margin wherever they can. And so, a lot of manufacturers, believe it or not, make anywhere from a 50 to 100% markup on the ingredients, which is well above where the cost should be. Traditionally, it should be, I would say, anywhere between 8 to 10% markup on those ingredients, to cover internal costs. And so, if you were to go out and source it, you would have gotten a better price. I can guarantee you that. That's for sure.
But I really don't want to buy 55-gallon drums of powder and ship it there. So at the very least, it's going to help me negotiate a better deal with them. Or IFT is going to help me find other manufacturers. IFT.org.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay. Or it gives you the leverage to negotiate, with your existing manufacturers. Say, look, I'm okay with you making a margin. I'm not okay with you making 50% on the ingredients. Let's find a place where we're both happy, we're both comfortable, and it's a win-win for everyone.
Yeah. And I had no understanding of it, no knowledge. Therefore, I had no power to renegotiate. My local rep was very nice, but she was probably making a big commission off of everything I did. And if my buyer, for those that are buying these, if my buyer had the knowledge that you have, he would have instantly had, as I mentioned in the intro, instant equity in the business on the day he closed, because he would have been able to reduce the cost of goods sold pretty significantly.
Absolutely.
Cool. So you said something prior to this about the packaging, the bottles, the capsule, the caps, and all that. Those are pretty standard things, and of course, the manufacturer is going to mark those up as well.
Mm-hmm.
But if I order them and ship them, are they just going to accept and receive it and not mark it up, or is it just something that, again, is knowledge is power, and I'm okay with you making 10% but not 50% on these?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I think you can go either way with the packaging. A lot of manufacturers really don't want to supply any film for the most part.
What's film?
Film is like, if you look at like a stick pack or a gusseted bag, a baking mix would come in, anything that's like custom printed that you can't reuse for another customer. Most manufacturers don't really want to supply that because they're buying it on your behalf, right?
Right.
And if you don't come back, they're stuck with all this material. On bottles and canisters that are blank, that only require a label, you're gonna get your best price by working with them direct, and those are quite inexpensive. Although I encourage you as an owner to understand what are those costs. Don't just take your manufacturer's word for it. If they're going to break down the line item of, what is the cost for the lid, what is the cost for the bottle, do your own research and make sure you're getting the very best possible price. And you know what? Just because they're buying a lot of them doesn't mean they're doing a good job buying. And I've found this a number of times, and I continue to find it as I'm doing more of these evaluations, that the buyers of these big nutrition companies, they're buying thousands of ingredients, and hundreds of different packaging options. It's impossible for them to stay on top of what really is the market price and where it should be. And so that's what we do. We focus on where is the market price at all times, because who cares more about their own business than themselves, right? And so we actually bring savings to our existing partners and manufacturers because they were unaware that the market shifted. And usually it's when the market shifted down, because the ingredient suppliers are happy to take those purchase orders at a higher price.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Is there a resource like IFT.org where that is just for packaging, or do you have to dig around Google to figure that out?
There is a company called Pack Expo.
Okay.
So you can go to Pack Expo. I think it's packexpo.com or .org, and very similar. It lists all the packaging manufacturers and distributors, and it's another big show in Vegas. Or used to be another big show in Vegas every single year.
It'll be big again.
Right? It will be
someday.
And believe it or not, the IFT and the Pack Expo are one weekend apart from one another. So you usually would go to the Pack Expo first, and then you'd stay a few days, party, have some fun in Vegas, and then you go to the IFT.
Or go for a refreshing hike, depending upon your preferences.
That's right.
or gamble, whatever.
Exactly.
All right. That makes sense. It's nice that it's that close together for sure. It sounds complicated though. I gotta be honest with you. It'd be nice for me to have this knowledge, but I don't necessarily want to do it all myself. I'm so many different things that I'm operating as an entrepreneur that it wouldn't really make sense for me to take all of this on. Hence the reason why I've got you on the podcast. I love that you're giving it away for free. People can go do this research, but ultimately they'll have to make their own decision whether they want to step into that your realm and try to do this themselves or connect with you and see if it makes sense to have you do the work for them. Can you talk about some of the work you've done for clients as a way of example and what you've been able to, save them in terms of cost of goods sold or packaging and things of that nature to help them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have, I'll give you an example of one of the early brands we took on about 2 years ago. They were selling a turmeric curcuminoid extract product. It was a 60 count capsule in a bottle. You take 2 a day, so 30-day supply. They were doing about 20,000 bottles a month in sales. And they were referred to me by a mutual friend that I helped them save money on their manufacturing. They said, hey, you might want to let Sean take a look at your cost of goods and your supply chain and see if there's some savings, because they were growing and they were doing quite well. And so I did a full evaluation on it. They were paying just over $12 a bottle. And we were able to get them the exact same product for under $9 a bottle.
Holy cow. They were selling 20,000 units a month?
A month. So this was 2 years ago.
Wow.
Fast forward to today, they were saving, $60,000 a month when they made the switch. They're now doing between 100 and 150,000 bottles a month. That is $300,000 to $450,000 a month in savings.
I don't know about your math. I don't know about your math, but I've got my calculator up on my screen, and it's more than that originally. You saved them a lot more. If it was 20,000 units a month, went from $20 to $9, you saved $11 a unit. That's $220,000 a month.
No, it went from $12 to $9. $3
okay, there's my bad math. There's my bad
go.
math. So you saved them. Okay, all right, your math is right. Yep.
Yeah.
The bottom line, though, even with that, it sounds like it got a lot better as they grew. That $60,000 a month, it's real cash, folks, that's in your bank account to spend on advertising or put in your pocket. But that's an increase in that example, Sean, of $720,000 a year if it was equal throughout every month of the year. So it's more cash in the bank now, but also a business of that size with recurring revenue, and I'm sure the discretionary earnings was a lot more than 720. It's probably 5 or 6 times that, or 10 times that. That's something probably valued in that 7 to 10 time multiple range. So for simple math, you added probably $7 million onto the value of their company by reducing their cost of goods sold like that. That's pretty impressive.
It is. And as you mentioned, it goes to the bottom line. So as much as I'd love to say their growth and success was because of the work that I did for them, but I'm only a small part of it. Obviously, they're fantastic marketers. They're really good at what they do, and they do give me a lot of credit. And we've grown and we've done a lot more products with them to date because we're able to check the boxes in the 3 major qualities that I tell everybody to look for in a business.
And what are those?
Service, quality, and price. And so if your partner, your vendor, manufacturer can check all 3 of those boxes for you, you're going to have the best chance of success as a business owner. Okay. If you're getting 2 of them, you're going to still do okay, but you're not going to be as successful.
So I get the service and price. Let's go to the one in the middle in quality. What type of things do you look for in terms of credentials that a manufacturing company has to have for you to do business with them?
We are very strict on quality. So we want to make sure that every single ingredient is tested on the inbound receiving to our manufacturer. And so, that's where you make sure that obviously you work with trusted vendors and suppliers that you've known for many, many years, right? Just because you found a great price doesn't mean that they're really selling you vitamin C. Right? It could be. Does that really
happen?
Else.
I mean, I know we all talk about the fear of that, but how often does that happen? I guess even if it happened 10% of the time, it's way too much. But
it doesn't happen as often as it used to. I think we had a little bit of of a rogue industry many, many years ago.
Yeah.
But it's really improved. It's really cleaned up quite a bit. And we have some independent agencies that are going after brands and businesses that do this. And we do hear about these class action lawsuits, but not as much as we used to.
Okay.
But it's a great question.
Okay, so they've got to test it on the inbound so that and that's the manufacturers doing the test, or they hire an outside service to do the test?
Usually the manufacturer has that capability to do it in-house. Okay. Otherwise, it just takes too long to have to send out the ingredients and have it tested. Mm-hmm. But coming back to the relationship with the vendor who's supplying the ingredients, you want to make sure they're sending you something that's not expired either, or not near expiration.
That would be useful. Yeah.
Yeah, and so on the inbound receiving of the ingredients, you've got to make sure that you've really done your due diligence, or your manufacturer has, to make sure you're getting something that's fresh product, that's truly what it is, and actually works in your finished product at the end of the day. And same thing on the end of manufacturing. We want to make sure that you meet your label claim. There's a lot of these ambulance chasers in our industry. Yeah. And we don't want to give them anything to go after. So we always want to make sure we meet label claim.
It's funny because I just, I've done a couple of deals recently where actually Brad launched one a month or so ago where there were some pretty nasty letters that were from, ambulance chasers. We'll leave it at that. And partially because of mislabeling, and it does exist. It's out there. I know that claims and false claims are a pretty big no-no, and people will get you pretty quickly in this industry. I had a local attorney general in this small town or a county in the state of California, obviously more than a decade ago because I sold mine in 2010. But he sent me this nasty letter, wanted settlement for my false claims where I used the word will instead of may. Oops. And I did some research, and based upon my attorney's advice, to see how many units I had sold in that county. The number was 0. So I told him to go pound sand, but I corrected my claims, made sure it was okay.
I thought you were going to say 1, and it was to that attorney.
No, it would have been to him. Yeah, he should have bought one before he sent me the nasty letter. Yeah. Tell me about the types of manufacturers and how you work. Your company has relationships with how many manufacturers and what types of manufacturers, and what kind of clients do you connect with them or renegotiate deals for?
Yeah, great question. So our relationships are not just along the lines of finished product manufacturing, but it's also with ingredient manufacturers and packaging manufacturers.
Can you define the 3 of those for me?
Sure. So let's start with packaging. That could be someone that prints labels, manufactures bottles, lids, gusseted bags, stick pack film, sachet film, anything on the packaging front.
Okay.
On ingredients, or ingredient manufacturers that are either doing the extraction of those ingredients, that are milling the ingredients, they're doing something to it to enhance its bioavailability or its dispersion. And so we have relationships and deep relationships on the ingredient side as well. And then on the manufacturing side, this is where they take the packaging and the ingredients, put it all together, and give you a phenomenal looking product that's extremely high quality and beneficial to your customers.
Okay. So you work with all 3. How is it that you work with, like if I was your client on my behalf with the ingredient manufacturers? Because isn't it the manufacturer that's ordering from the ingredient manufacturer?
So most of the time that's the case, and manufacturers really don't like us most of the time. And that's because of what we do. Okay. But the ones that do like us, they love us because we bring them millions of dollars in business a month. And so not everybody's going to be okay with having these types of conversations, right? One little trick that we do in-house, we do like to allow our manufacturers to buy all the ingredients because it's easier for them to do that. Yeah. We make sure they don't mark it up too much. We keep a very close eye on where the market price is. But I'll give you an example of one brand we're working with today. And so there's an ingredient that we bring from France that's over $2,000 a kilo. It's contributing to about $2.50 in cost in each bottle. So
Okay.
it is significant. It is more than 50% of the actual cost of the product itself. We buy that ingredient, and the customer actually buys the ingredient and ships it into the manufacturer, because that markup that they would put on there, even if it's 10%, that's a massive markup
Yeah.
on $2,200 a kilo.
Yeah.
So it's a good little trick to pick the things that are really the biggest cost drivers and then maybe supply those. I'll give you one more example. In a lot of drink mixes, you'll have natural flavors. Well, that flavor cost is very expensive, especially if you're getting it from a flavor house. A lot of brand owners let their manufacturers create those flavors for them. What we do is we actually don't allow the manufacturers to create anything. We don't want the manufacturers to own anything. And that's where it can become challenging one day, is when you want to sell your business and that new buyer wants to maybe move the manufacturing because they know that they can save a tremendous amount of money on the cost of goods. If you don't own the formula, or if you don't even own the flavor system, they're going to be stuck, and you're going to be stuck, and your business isn't going to be worth as much. So the first thing that I do when I speak to clients is I make sure that they own 100% of everything, so that when they do want to sell their business, it's going to be as easy as possible, and they're going to be able to maximize as much value as they possibly can without having to pull in other people and
That's
other brands.
interesting. It goes to the transferability pillar that we talk about. There's risk, growth, transferability, and documentation. And normally transferability is not an issue, but it sounds like in this case it could be, even if it's after the fact, when somebody buys the business and wants to move the manufacturing to save on cost of goods sold and gets an instant equity. That's very interesting.
Absolutely.
Are you focused primarily on in the human supplement space, or you do any other like pet space or anything like that?
We are exclusive on human supplement. Doesn't mean that our existing manufacturers can't make pet supplements, but we just haven't really gone. We haven't really gone into that area. Although it intrigues me, and I see that it's becoming a really popular place. I mean,
It is. Yeah.
It's shocking at how much, and you being a pet owner, at how much money people will spend on their pets. And in some cases, I've heard people will spend more money on their pets than they do on themselves. so it's an intriguing category, but we haven't gone into it yet.
I'm not one of those pet owners, by the way. So I'm
Nothing
sorry.
wrong with that, though.
Sorry for those people out there in the audience that are. But yeah, you see Dasher in the background. Oh, no, that's Willow. They switched today. Oh, well. Yeah, no, it's an interesting space. If a pet listing comes up, that's a supplement pet business, human supplement business as well. But speaking of pets individually, we get multiple offers on that all the time. So if somebody was in that space and wanted to hire you as a consultant just to educate them on how to negotiate with their manufacturers, that's a service that you offer, or do you foresee, in the future that you end up working directly with different manufacturers of pet-related products? Yeah,
that's a great question. I'm not sure if I'm not sure to either. It's a really good question.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure that we were going to turn this into a business. TWSnutrition.com, I was doing this as a favor for friends, right? So I had lots of friends come to me that own brands, and I'd help do some negotiating, or I'd make some intros, or I'd give some, some advice. And then I start getting more people coming to me. I'm like, okay, I got to turn this into a business. And the very first client that we took on, we saved them $4 million in their first year.
Holy cow.
And I was just like, this is a huge company. It's got thousands of employees. I'm like, why can't they do this? What is it that they're missing here? And I think it comes back to, they've got one buyer that's buying thousands of components, and they don't know what they're doing. And so as it relates to the pet space, it might evolve into that, where I start digging in, because it's very similar. Supply chain is supply chain, right? There's a lot of similarities there, a lot of the crossover ingredients and suppliers, where we might get into that and broaden our scope a little bit more.
I'm predicting you will, and we'll have you back on in a couple of years specifically to talk about the pet niche.
I look forward to it.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. You filled a need, right? There's, you're just helping out friends, and then there's $4 million in that first, paying client. Can you talk in broad strokes how the cost structure works, like how you charge fees and things of this nature?
Absolutely. So, and I hope I don't get a ton of inquiries because I want to make sure I can get back to everybody that replies, but we don't charge for this service. There is no cost. It's absolutely free. And you're probably thinking, how is this possible?
Okay.
And
Exactly what I'm thinking.
yeah, is
All
this
right. It's
guy?
not a business then, right? It's a charity. What are you doing?
So we've saved at a minimum 20% off of our cost of goods for all the brands that have come into us, and has gone up to at least 60%. So anywhere from 26% we've saved them off their cost of goods. That savings has a commission built in there for us that we get from our manufacturers or our preferred manufacturers that we work with.
Oh, okay.
And
So the manufacturer is paying you.
So we work directly with the principals, the founders of these companies. We're very close friends. We've known them for many years. We've helped them grow their businesses to where they are today. And so very similar to what a sales rep in that company would get paid, we would just get paid instead, right? And so there isn't a director of sales or a VP of sales that's involved. We're working directly with the C-suite team at each of these manufacturers. And so we build that in. And if we can help you save, that 20 to 60%, or maybe even more. I hope not. I hope you're not overpaying that much.
Yeah.
But then it's a win-win for everybody, and it's been a really, really successful model for us and our clients.
All right. With that, I'm going to just help the audience again. It's TWSnutrition.com. Try not to shut the site down with so much traffic. Company's Total Wellness Solutions. How else do people reach out to you, Sean, to get in touch and learn more about what you do and the services that you provide?
It's word of mouth. It's really I probably get about 2 to 3 referrals a week, and so I'm spending a lot of time digging down and speaking with these business owners, whether they want to sell their businesses or they're thinking about selling them. And they want to maximize as much margin as they possibly can, or they're just starting out. You've got a little bit of traction, and they feel like this test that they've done is really turning into a business for them.
Wow. Yeah, I've got about a dozen people I might need to refer to you. We're just going to go back through the people that bought nutritional supplement businesses in the last 12 months and
we would welcome it.
Refer them out to you. Tremendous.
I think they would love it. We would love it.
Yeah, it's going to help you. It's going to help them. And oddly enough, it's going to help Quiet Light as well, because eventually they'll come back and sell, and they'll have a bigger, stronger, more valuable business, which is good for everyone. And the buyer will have a business in great shape, knowing that the margins are strong.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. A lot of these brand owners, they're great at marketing. They're great at selling. They've got some superpower that makes them really good at what they do. It's hard for them to be good at everything. So that's where we fill this void that is really unique and niche, but extremely important for their overall success.
So pills, hard tablets, capsules, powders, everything across the spectrum for human supplementation.
Everything. Yep. Capsules, tabs, powders, going into every type of packaging you can imagine. We are doing liquids now as well. Okay. It's something we shied away from because it's a lot more challenging, but we actually just started doing liquids, and I'm not sure it's something we're going to focus on. The liquid business is tough. It's tough for any brand owner. Shipping water is very, very difficult. It's heavy. Margins aren't as good, but we did start getting.
What if it's a little tiny bottle? Like, I'm holding up my hands, folks. It's probably 2 inches. I sold a liquid nutritional supplement company last year. It's the tiny, 2 or 3 ounces. I have an intro to send to you. The buyer would be thrilled to talk to you on that one.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're doing a 2-ounce shot right now. And so yeah, we, anything powders, and we are doing liquids right now as well.
Fantastic. All right, folks. Total Wellness Solutions, TWSnutrition.com. Sean Ross. He's not charging you for the services. Don't overwhelm him with calls if you're in the nutritional supplement space as a buyer or seller. If you're a buyer, you haven't done the deal yet, or you're just looking, mark your calendar and reach out to him once the transaction's closed and you own the business, or maybe get a ballpark idea of how much savings you'll get. Is that possible if they're looking at a site, and are you able to say, ballpark, I know that these ingredients could probably be reduced by, well, you just said it. You said everybody that you work with, they're saving at least 20%. So
that's how the conversation goes.
Do the math. Yeah.
Yeah. I look at their product real quick at their label, and they tell me what they're paying, and I'm like, okay, I think we can make this for X. And yeah, there's 25-30% right there. Yeah. And that's really where it starts.
So if you're in a competitive space, in a competitive environment where you're trying to buy a business and there are multiple offers, you could take that knowledge that you gained from Sean and make sure you get the business, even if you outbid some others. And no, I'm not trying to drive up the price of the business, but if you want to get it, and that's the challenge on some of these listings these days. Chuck just launched a business a couple of weeks ago in the pet nutritional supplement space, and he's got 12 offers so far. David did the same thing, and David capped it. He's like, I don't know how much value that 13th offer is going to bring. But if you have this kind of knowledge where you know that you can work with Sean and reduce your cost of goods sold by 20%, whereas the other 11 folks or 5 folks don't know this, you can stretch a little bit more on the budget in terms of purchasing the business, so you make sure you get that gain. Sean, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. Thanks so much for coming on. I think we're going to help a lot of people here.
Thank you, Joe. Hope everybody enjoyed it.